to come up with that balance. And I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that. But it's not exhaustive. I mean, so it's, even though we've gathered a lot of good information in there, we're not making any claims that this is the end of the story. And let me cover some of the material that's in the document that'll be coming out in October, this week, hopefully. Well, actually, I don't know if it'll be this week. I think the other documents this week, this month in October, is going to be published to NDU. Since Mary has a relationship, she works at NDU, we're going to go through NDU Press. And it's in copy edit at the moment. So if you look at the way it's organized, we basically try to define in section 1.3 who the audience is. And that's going to be the acquirer, and that's a general concept of those that are involved with the acquisition of software. And then we generically divide up the acquisition lifecycle into the planning, contracting, implementation, acceptance phases, and finally the follow-on phases. And how can you think of and address software assurance issues throughout the acquisition lifecycle, whether it be thinking about the upfront risk assessment, you know, what are the risks that ultimately are going to be for that application when it's deployed, or the requirements that are going to be needed. What kind of tools can you use as far as the work statements or terms and conditions? How can you augment those for software assurance considerations? In the appendices, you know, we have some meat in here I think that'd be worthwhile referencing. We have a pretty comprehensive glossary just because, again, the audience is primarily the acquisition folks who don't necessarily have a clue about this space. So we try to have a pretty comprehensive glossary. For the due diligence questionnaires that Joe mentioned earlier, we spent a lot of time trying to come up with questions that should be thought of, and we divided them up by software type. And then within that, we have different software assurance concern areas, whether it be assurance case or the vulnerability management, development, how are they actually developing the software, software pedigree or history. And then finally, we have a lot of sample RFP and contract language, including what came out of Owasp as far as Jeff Williams and his effort. One of the things that we addressed in this document, as well as in the standards efforts that we're trying to push with ISO, and you'll see this in other documents within the software assurance initiative and the work products we're producing, is this concept of an assurance case. And what we're trying to do there is basically say that if a vendor is claiming to be able to have a certain level of security and making different claims about their software, then they should be able to support those arguments with evidence. Okay? Now, how is that related to the acquisition side of the equation? Well, if you don't contractually ask for the work products and deliverables that would support that evidence, then you're really going to be hampering your ability to make that assurance case ultimately. So up front in your strategic planning and thinking about what ultimately are you going to need for an assurance case when you deploy this application, the contract shop needs to be told, well, what deliverables or work products throughout the supply chain, not necessarily just the prime, but ultimately those that are supplying the software components to, you know, whoever the prime might be, that you need to be able to have to make an assurance claim viable. And so again, that's something that we talk about here, and I just pulled one of the sections out of the questionnaires as far as questions you might ask about that help generate the evidence for assurance claims. And so that's just an area that we talked about. And I think the document again will be available in the next few weeks on the NDU. Okay, that's right. On the working group site you can get access to it, but it'll be available as a book form in a few weeks. And I think, Joe, you're going to wrap it up on business case.
So we understand that many people, while you really believe in this, you're still having a tough time convincing your seniors that we need to be doing this, either changing the way you do business, maybe even making an investment in that. And so we've already realized, and we've got this posted on our website, that an understanding that products with built-in security are more resilient and therefore cost less to sustain. It turns out it's not just the consumer who saves money on this. Developers actually save money by building security in up front, and requires less rework prior to being put into use. We already have resources available to assist organizations and to integrate these security practices in the way you do business. We've got a lot of lessons learned to indicate a need to understand how to leverage the best practices to effectively implement application security tools and methods. And to help people, we're actually running a workshop at Carnegie Mellon the end of this week that the output's going to be available, but also we've got a lot of people already participating in that. So get off the stage here. Understand that your existing successful development practices should continue to go on. Don't alter them significantly, but you can start embedding application security tools and application security practices into that life cycle today. It's not a wholesale change that you have to do. Whenever you do make those changes, do so incrementally. And one of the best things that you could start doing is making sure that everyone is looking at security risk-based requirements consideration. Even if you're not doing formal threat modeling or threat analysis, ask each of your developers, so that's he or she's touching that code, what could go wrong, who could cause it, and how could it be done? If they're thinking about that during the development, they're already becoming a little bit more security focused. Embed that in your training and awareness. As we mentioned, resources are available. Come to our websites. Even through Owasp, there's a very good partnership with what we've got through Owasp and our software assurance efforts that go on for collaboration. We invite you to engage in our community. As we mentioned, it's free to attend, free to participate. In October, in about 2 weeks, we have our software assurance forum. It's going to be held at the National Institute for Standards and Technology. The only thing it costs you is your time and being able to get out there to Maryland to be able to do that. And you can, again, download all this information through our Build Security In website. This is a public-private effort combined. I mean, this is not just about the federal government. It's more significantly, it's through industry and those who have to live with this, and we're trying to help do that. Because as the government, we have a vested interest in our enterprises being more resilient. We appreciate you coming out here. We've got about 2 minutes. Stan and I are going to be around here if you've got some questions. So with that, appreciate your attention.